I was 7 years old the last time I ran away from it. Every morning, before the sun was properly up, and before the red dust of the Nsuka roads had been stirred by the first vehicles going toward the market, my mother would call me into the kitchen. There was a small clay basin on the floor near the cooking stone. She had filled it the night before with clean water, and she had prayed over it before she slept. I did not know this then. I only knew that the water was always warm when she set it down, even in Harmattan, when the air outside was so dry it cracked the lips of the older boys who walked to school ahead of us. She would kneel, hold my feet over the basin, wash them carefully, both feet, with her hands, dry them with a cloth she kept for nothing else. Then she would take her right thumb and press it to a small clay pot of palm oil near the wall, and she would mark the sole of my right foot, then my left. Her lips moved. Igbo words I never fully heard. Something she said quietly, to someone other than me. I was 7. I was always late. My friends were outside already, calling from the road, and every morning I would pull my feet away before she finished and run out into the morning light, still not knowing what she was doing, never asking, never thinking to ask. I assumed every mother in Nsuka did this. I assumed it was a kitchen habit, the way some families prayed before meals and some did not. I did not think about it again for 38 years. This is not a story about village custom. My mother held a doctorate in education from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She read widely. She thought precisely. She was not a credulous woman. She washed my feet every morning before school because something in her knew it had to be done. Not as ritual, not as tradition, as protection. And it took me the better part of my adult life to understand why she was right. The answer is in a text that most Bible scholars know exists and almost none teach from. The Testament of Solomon, written down in its earliest surviving form between the 1st and the 5th century AD, drawing on Hebrew demonological traditions that are considerably older. The standard critical edition is C.C. McCown's 1922 text, still the version cited at Princeton, Cambridge, and SOAS, still the text I work from. The Testament is not mystical literature. It is not a grimoire for occultists to misuse. It is an administrative record, Solomon's own account of the demonic entities he interrogated during the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. Each entity documented, each method of operation recorded, each remedy specified. I had been studying this text for years before I found the section that stopped me. But let me begin where the trail actually begins, because the foot anointing does not start with the Testament of Solomon. It starts with Psalm 91. Every Nigerian mother knows verse 11. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. It is the most memorized protective verse in the African Christian world. Read at naming ceremonies, spoken over children leaving for school, printed inside Bibles that are worn to the spine. But verse 12. I want you to focus on verse 12. Because I taught Psalm 91 for 20 years, and I missed what it actually says there. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. The foot, not the face, not the hands, not the chest, the foot, and the stone, and the road. The word translated as ways in verse 11 is the Hebrew derek. Derek does not mean the abstract direction of one's spiritual life. It means roads, movement, the physical act of going somewhere. The angels in verse 11 are not stationed in the house. They are not assigned to the church building. They are assigned to feet in motion, feet on roads, feet crossing thresholds, feet moving from one kind of territory into another. And verse 12 tells you what specifically happens when that angelic assignment is active. The foot does not strike the stone. The stone is not a metaphor for adversity in general. In the demonological framework that underlies this psalm, and that Solomon understood precisely, the stone on the road is the specific instrument of specific forces assigned to specific terrain. The angel's job is not to clear the road ahead. The angel's job is to guard the foot, the contact point, the last covenant boundary before enemy territory. This is the granularity the church has been reading past for generations. I need to show you the Testament of Solomon now, because once I understood verse 12, I had to find where the Psalm's theology came from. And I found it. In the section of the Testament dealing with what the Hebrew tradition calls Shedim, the Talmudic Tractat Berakot, which predates the Testament of Solomon, is explicit about a class of harmful spirits the ancient Hebrews called Shedim. They are not assigned to houses or buildings or regions. They are assigned to crossroads, to thresholds, to paths, to the moment of crossing from protected space into unprotected space, not the interior of the house, not the destination, the crossing itself, the 10 steps between the front door and the road. Solomon, who had interrogated these entities personally during the construction of the temple, understood this with the precision of someone who had heard them describe their own methods. He had asked each one the same questions. What do you do? What is your domain? What stops you? And one of the things he learned was this: the most dangerous moment for any person is not inside the sanctuary. It is the moment the threshold is crossed. The moment the child moves from the space you have consecrated to the space you cannot consecrate, the space that belongs to the day. I want you to think about the mezuzah, because it will make the foot anointing make complete sense. The mezuzah is one of the most architecturally precise spiritual protection systems in human history. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 9. Write these words on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And the Talmudic tradition, building on this commandment, specifies the placement. The mezuzah is affixed at a diagonal, angled toward the interior of the house. The symbolism is deliberate. The house is declared as belonging to the covenant. Any force that approaches that doorpost encounters a marked threshold. Solomon designed this, not as decoration, not as cultural habit, as spiritual architecture, a fixed covenant mark at the fixed boundary. But the mezuzah cannot do one thing. It cannot move. The child who walks out through the marked doorpost becomes, in that moment, their own moving threshold, a living boundary. Every room they enter, every road they walk, every crossroads they approach, every transition from protected space to unprotected space. The Shedim that operate at thresholds encounter this child at each crossing throughout the day. All day, Monday through Saturday, the mezuzah stays at the house. The child does not. Solomon understood this gap, and his answer was not another fixed marker, it was a portable one. On the body, at the exact point where the body meets every surface the child would cross, the sole of the foot. Now I need to say something directly about Solomon's children, because this is the part that nobody teaches. Solomon's children were not protected simply because they were royal. Being Solomon's child was not, in itself, protection. Every force operating against Solomon's covenant mission had a specific interest in his offspring. The palace was the most contested spiritual address in Israel, and the palace gate was the moment of maximum exposure. The child stepping from the inner court onto the road was leaving behind every architectural protection Solomon had designed and entering territory where the entities he had interrogated personally were operating without restriction. Solomon was not a man who read about these forces in a library. He had looked at them directly. He had heard them describe their methods. He knew exactly what waited on the other side of the gate. And he marked his children before they crossed. He took olive oil, not palm oil, not any domestic oil. Olive oil, which in the Hebrew covenant tradition was set apart, the same oil used in priestly consecration in Leviticus chapter 8. the same oil burning in the temple menorah, the same oil that anointed David before he became king. When Solomon anointed his children's feet before they left the palace, he was not being affectionate. He was applying covenant substance to covenant contact points before his children crossed into contested territory. He was arming them at the foot, at the exact point where the angels of Psalm 91 verse 12 were stationed. The foot, marked, the angels, deployed, the Shedim at the crossing, addressed. Let me go back to verse 12 one more time. So that you will not strike your foot against a stone. When Solomon anointed his children's feet, he was activating the angelic assignment described in that verse. The angels are not passive observers waiting to be asked. They are commanded. The covenant language of the psalm is exact. He will command his angels. Command is not a request, it is an operational order. The foot anointing was the mechanism by which Solomon declared the assignment active for each child. A covenant mark on the body point that would cross every threshold, every crossroads, every stone in the road. The mark traveled with the child. The angelic guard traveled with the child. The name of the covenant went with them past the point where Solomon's palace name meant nothing. And this is where the research became something I was not expecting. Because I had been working through this material in the SOAS library, working through the connections between Psalm 91 and the Testament of Solomon, when I found something in the academic literature on African Christianity that I had not anticipated finding. The HTS Theological Studies Journal and the Journal of Pentecostal Theology have both documented a practice among Nigerian Pentecostal communities, specifically in Igbo and Yoruba areas, of foot anointing of children before school. Mothers marking the feet of children at the moment of departure, speaking protection over them at the threshold. The scholars who documented this noted that the practice predates the Pentecostal church structures in Nigeria. It predates the missionary period. It was present in Igbo land before Western Christianity arrived in the 19th century. In Yoruba tradition, the oriki, the praise incantations spoken for a child's protection, are traditionally delivered at the feet before significant journeys. Not at the head, not over the chest. At the feet. The Akan tradition in Ghana carries the same understanding. Protective invocation before departure targets the feet and the ground. The crossing point. These traditions did not read Psalm 91 verse 12. These traditions did not have access to the Testament of Solomon. They arrived independently across separate cultures, separate languages, separate histories, at precisely the same theological understanding. The foot is where protection must be applied, because the foot is where the child meets the world. I sat with that for a long time, because I was not born inside any of those academic traditions. I was born in Nsukka, to a mother who held a clay basin, who pressed palm oil to the soles of my feet, who said words in Igbo that I was always running too fast to hear. She was not practicing Solomonic theology. She was not quoting Psalm 91. She was carrying something older than her own understanding of it, a transmission that had passed through her mother and her mother's mother through all the years when educated people told them it was superstition, through the colonial period when the church told them to stop, through everything that should have erased it. It survived because it was true enough to hold, specific enough to transmit, correct enough that each generation felt, without being able to explain it, that you do not let a child walk out of your house without marking their feet. And for those watching who are Muslim, I want to be clear. Solomon is Suleiman in the Quran. Surah An-Naml, chapter 27, describes the extraordinary authority given to Suleiman over forces that are not visible to the ordinary eye. The Quran does not contradict the protective theology I am describing, it deepens it. The practice of basmala before departure, Bismillahir-Rahman-Ir-Rahim, spoken before crossing any significant threshold, is structurally identical to what Solomon did at the palace gate. You are declaring jurisdiction before you cross. You are marking the moment of transition with the name of the one whose authority covers the territory ahead. In the Hebrew tradition and in the Islamic one, the principle is the same. The departure must be declared. The boundary must be marked. Not assumed. Not hoped for. Declared. Let me give you the protocol. 5 steps. Solomon's morning deployment, which you can do in 5 minutes. Step 1. Take olive oil on your thumb. Olive oil? Specifically, it is available everywhere and costs almost nothing. Consecrated in the Hebrew, Christian, and Islamic traditions as covenant oil. The act of choosing this oil and not another marks the intention as covenant action, not domestic routine. Step 2. Hold your child's right foot, then the left. Right foot first, the foot of dominant direction, the one that steps out first. Both feet, full coverage, no gap. The child is marked completely. Step 3. Draw a cross on the sole of each foot, or if your tradition carries it, the Star of David. An invisible seal. No one will see it. Your child will put on socks and shoes and walk out into the world, and no surface they cross that day will be crossed unmarked. The covenant sign travels under every step. Step 4. Speak Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12, aloud over each foot. Not in your head, not silently, aloud, into the physical world. Because the forces described in the Testament of Solomon operate in the physical world, because the declaration must be made in the same domain where the child will be moving. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Speak it over the right foot. Speak it over the left. Step 5. Release them with a single decree. No evil shall befall you on your way. You are marked. That is the protocol. For those without children, your own feet. Every morning before you leave. Solomon documented this for himself before he had children. His own departure was the first application. His own feet touching enemy territory. His own need for the covenant mark before the ground changed beneath him. You are not exempt from the territory described in Psalm 91. The stone on the road is still there. The angels are still assigned. The covenant mark still activates the assignment. Let me close with the phone call. Several years after I made the connection in the SOAS library, after I had read the passages carefully, after I had traced the convergence between the Solomonic tradition and the practice my mother had been carrying her whole life, I called her. It was late. London time. She was awake. She is always awake late. I asked her, "How did you know to do that to my feet every morning before school?" There was a pause. Not because she didn't understand the question. She had just never been asked it before. And she said, "My mother did it. Her mother did it. I don't know who started it." I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time after we finished talking. She had carried a transmission across generations without knowing its name. Not as scholarship, not as religious doctrine, as something felt. The way a practice survives when the knowledge behind it has been lost, but the truth of it has not. She carried it through all the years when educated Nigerians were being told that their grandmother's knowledge was backward and provincial, through the period when the clay basin and the words in Igbo were considered habits to be left behind, through everything that should have erased it. She carried it anyway. Because you do not stop doing something that is true. Not really. Not all the way. Something holds. I was 7 years old, pulling my feet away before she finished. I did not understand what she was doing. I do now. The covenant mark she pressed into the sole of my right foot, then my left. Every morning before I ran out into the Nsuka dust was Solomon's protocol. She did not know his name. She knew the truth of it, which I have come to believe is what matters more. Your children leave home tomorrow morning The church will not do this for them on a Sunday and have it cover Monday through Saturday. The protection must travel with the child, on the feet, in the covenant, activated by oil and words and the full authority of Psalm 91, verse 12. Solomon documented this 3,000 years ago for exactly the world your children walk into every morning. The same roads, the same thresholds, the same forces, the same 10 steps between the front door and the road. My mother carried the practice without the knowledge. You now have both, the mechanism and the man who left it for you. Mark their feet tomorrow morning. Before they run, sleep well tonight. Or do this first. Think about who leaves your house in the morning. Think about the 10 steps between the door and the road. And remember what Solomon knew. The angels are not stationed in the house. They are deployed at the foot. Mark it.